ECMA script is a standardized scripting language for JavaScript. The current ES version supported in modern browsers is ES5. However, ES6 tackles a lot of the limitations of the core language, making it easier for developers like us to code. In this lesson, we will explore some of the main features of ES6. As the latest update of JavaScript, ES6 has brought a new syntax and awesome features to make code more modern and readable. In this lesson, we'll show you how some of these features enable you to write less code and do more. Let's get cracking. For this lesson, we're going to explore some of the new features of ES6, starting off with the arrow functions. Then we're going to find out more about spread operators and how exactly to use them, and then understand some of the new looping and iterative methods for arrays. In ES6, you can define functions using a particularly compact syntax known as arrow functions. Let's start by looking some of the features of arrow functions. This syntax is reminiscent of mathematical notation and uses an arrow to separate the function parameters from the function body. The function keyword is not used, and since function arrows are expressed instead of statements, there is no need for a function name either. The general form of an arrow function is a comma-separated list of parameters in parentheses, and then followed by the function body in curly brackets, like in this example. But the arrow functions support an even more compact syntax. If the body of the function is a single return statement, you can omit the return keyword, the semicolon that goes with it, and the curly brackets, and write the body of the function as an expression whose value is to be returned, like this. Another really interesting feature of the arrow function is that it's exactly one parameter, so you can omit the parentheses around the parameter list, just like this. But do note that the arrow function with no arguments at all must be written with an empty pair of parentheses, like this. And just a second note that when you're writing an arrow function, you do not need to put a new line between the function parameters and the arrow. Arrow functions differ from functions defined in other ways in one critical way. They inherit the value of the this keyword from the environment in which they are defined, rather than defining their own invocation context, as functions defined in other ways do. This is a very important and very useful feature of arrow functions. Arrow functions also differ from other functions in that they do not have a prototype property. Now that means that they cannot be used as a constructor function for new classes. Your challenge for this lesson is to create an arrow function that accepts a number and returns the double of that number. The spread operator was also added to JavaScript in ES6. In JavaScript, spread syntax refers to the use of an ellipsis, which is 3 dots, to expand an iterable object into the list of arguments. If we have a look at this example, we created list A with 3 values, 1, 2, and 3, and then we defined list B and assigned its values to be equal to list A. After that, we added 4 to list B using the push method, and we console the 2 lists. The output is the following. So the question is, why did list A change its value when we clearly only changed list B? Well, the answer is pretty simple. When we did the assignment, aka const list B equals list A, JavaScript assigned to list B a reference to list A. So in essence, list A and list B are pointing to the same list in memory. So then, how do we create a copy? Well, this is precisely where the spread operators come into the picture. They create copy. Let's take a look at that previous example using spread operators. And the output is, in this case, by using the spread operator, we are making a new copy in the memory of the array. So When we update list D, we are not affecting list C at all. The spread operator is very useful to copy objects. We can also use it to merge multiple objects or lists into a single object. Now let's have a look at some examples of merging lists and merging objects. For merging lists, this would be the formula. Here we have two lists, list 1 and list 2. And when we use the spread operator to merge them into merged list, the output will be as follows. And for merging objects, the formula will look like this. Same as lists, we defined two objects, and then we use the spread operator to merge them, and the output is this. The spread operator will copy the two objects and put them into the merged object, as you can clearly see. And did you know, from the new features that we've already shown you, you will have gathered that new features and syntax that ES6 has brought to the JavaScript language allow you to write code in a more expressive way. And back to another really cool feature of ES6. ECMA script defines 5 iterative methods for arrays. Each of the 5 iterative methods accept 2 arguments, a function to run on each item, and an optional scope object in which to run the function, affecting the value of this. The function passed into one of these methods will receive 3 arguments: the array item value, the position of the item in the array, and the array object itself. The iterative methods are as follows. Every runs the given function on every item in the array and returns true if the function returns true for every item. And then filter runs the given function on every item in the array and returns an array of all the items for which the function returns true. For each runs the given function on every item in the array. This method has no return value. Map runs the given function on every item in the array and returns the result of each function call in an array. Sum runs the given function on every item in the array and returns true if the function returns true for any one item. These methods do not change the values contained in the array. Okay, so let's look at some of the different methods a bit more closely. Of these methods, the two most similar are every and sum, which both query the array for items matching some criteria. For every, the passed-in function must return true for every single item in order for the method to return true, otherwise it returns false. And the sum method, on the other hand, returns true if even one of the items causes the passed-in function to return true. Here's another example. Now this code calls both every and sum with a function that returns true if the given item is greater than 2. For every, the result is false because only some of the items fit the criteria. And for sum, the result is true because at least one of the items is greater than 2. The next iterative method is filter, which uses the given function to determine if an item should be included in the array that it returns. For example, to return an array of all the numbers greater than 2, the following code can be used. Here, an array containing the values 3, 4, 5, 4, and 3 is created and returned by the call to filter, because the passed-in function returns true for each of those items. This method is very helpful when querying an array for all items matching some criteria. The map method also returns an array. Each item in the array is the result of running the passed-in function on the original array item in the same location. For example, you can multiply every number in an array by 2 and are returned an array of those numbers, as shown here. The code in this example returns an array containing the result of multiplying each number by 2. This method is helpful when creating arrays with items that correspond to one another. The last method is for each, which simply runs the given function on every item in an array. There is no return value, and it's essentially the same as iterating over an array using a for loop. Here's a quick example. In this example, the for each function runs on every element in numbers arrays and do something after each iteration. So as you can see, all the array methods that we've just discussed ease the processing of arrays by performing a number of different operations. That's pretty cool, huh? Strings in JavaScript have been historically limited, lacking the capabilities one might expect coming from languages like Python or Ruby. ES6 template strings introduce a new way to define strings. Template strings use black ticks rather than single or double quotes used with regular strings. A template string could be written like this. So far, template strings don't seem to be giving us anything more than normal strings do. So let's change that by exploring what else they can do. One of the first real benefits is string substitution. Substitution allows us to make any valid JavaScript expression, including, say, the addition of variables, and inside a template literal. The result will be output as a part of the same string. Template strings can contain placeholders for string substitution using the $sign followed by curly brackets, as demonstrated here. Now, if we change the value of name, the output will be changed according to that. As all string substitutions in template strings are JavaScript expressions, we can substitute a lot more than variable names. For example, here we can use expression interpolation to embed for some readable inline math. So we've made a demo on how to create an arrow function, and we've also included a section on using different ES6 iterative methods to iterate through arrays. And there's some practicals on how to concatenate strings using the new ES6 feature. I really do hope you enjoy it. Sit back, strap up, and have fun. Alright, now let's see all of this in action. Before ES6, we used to write function like this. Let function equal function, and pass our arguments 1, arguments 2, and arguments 3. And then open our curly brackets and write our function body, which returns an expression. And now this is an old way of writing functions in JavaScript, but there is a very new, simple, and concise syntax for creating functions that's often better than the function expression, and it's called the arrow function. Arrow functions look like this. We simply type let func equal and then our arguments. Then we type an arrow and our expression. And this creates a function func that accepts argument 1, argument 2, and arguments 3, and then evaluates the expression on the right side with their use and returns a result. So the second function does the same thing as the first one. Let's go through an example. Imagine we have a function that takes 2 arguments, and then console the summation of them. So we can type something like this. Let sum equal and then our 2 arguments, so a and b. Then return a plus b, and then we console.log a plus b or console log sum and pass any 2 arguments. And we'll get a result of the summation of them. So let's console.log sum of 1 and 2. And then we save this and check the console, and we'll find 3 rendered to the screen. There we go, 3. Now, if I go back and change 3 and 2 and then save the file, I will get 5 rendered to the screen. As you can see, a and b return a plus b, means a function that accepts two arguments named a and b, and upon the execution, it evaluates the expression a plus b and then returns us the result. If we only had one argument, then parentheses around the parameters can be omitted in making that even shorter. For example, let's clear this and suppose we have function, let double equal, take one argument n, and then return n squared, or n multiplied by 2. Alright, so now if I console log double of 3 and save this, I should get 6 rendered to the screen. Double of 3, let's save it. There we go, 6. Now, if there are no arguments, parentheses will be empty, but they should be present. So let's imagine we have a function called say hi. Equal. Then we put an empty parentheses and the function, console log hello. Now, when I call this function and then save the file, I should get hello rendered to the screen. As you can see, we just put the empty parentheses because we don't have any arguments to pass. Alright, now let's take a look at multi-line arrow functions. The examples that we've just seen took arguments from the left of the arrow and evaluated the right side expression of them. Sometimes we need something a little bit more complex, like multiple expressions or statements. So let's see how we can use this. So if we have a function called sum, and this function taking two arguments a and b, and returns a multi-line function. So here, instead of directly console.log a plus b, let's define a variable called result. Let result equal a plus b. And then console.log this result. Now to use this multi-line, it has to be with inside curly brackets. And again, now it works fine. So if I call the function and pass any two values like 5 and 5, and then save the file, I should get 10 rendered to the screen. And that's how we define arrow functions with a single line or multi-line statements. And arrow functions are not just a shorthand for writing small stuff. They have some very specific and useful features. Alright, enough about our functions for now. Let's move on to the spread operator. The spread operator is denoted by 3 period dots, and it's used to expand arguments where 0 arguments are expected. So let's see how we can deal with the spread operator. Now, if we have a function called add 4 numbers, and then I'll pass my numbers a, b, c, and d, and then open my function body. And now what does this function actually do? Well, it retains a plus b plus c plus d. Now let's define a variable called numbers equal. Let numbers equal. And this variable is an array of 4 numbers. So it's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, if I console log add 4 numbers function, and you use the spread operator to enclose these numbers using the array of numbers, we should get the summation of the 4 numbers rendered to the screen. So now we can write something like console log add 4 nums, and then I'll use the spread operator, so 3 dots, and then write our variables. And what happened here in this statement? Well, we took the numbers, the values, or array values, and spread them using the spread operator, and added the function add 4 nums call. Now add 4 nums will take 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 and use them as a function argument to return the summation. So it will sum 1 plus 2, 3 plus 3, 6 plus 4, 10. So then when I save this and I check the console, I will find 10 rendered to the screen. So let's see how we can use the spread operator to copy an array. So let's clear this and define our fruits array. So let fruits equal, let's say, apple, orange, and banana. Let's define another array from the fruits array. So we can do that by writing let, say, new fruits array. Let new fruits. And then we use the spread operator and our first fruits array. Now, when I save this and then console the second array, the fruits array, I will find apple, orange, and banana copied from fruits array to the new array. So let's console log new fruits array. And then save the file. Let's go check the console. I find apple, orange, and banana. So now we can see another use of the spread operator, which is to concatenate arrays. So we can make 2 arrays in one array by using the spread operator. We can start off by defining 2 arrays. Imagine this is array 1 equals A, B, and C. And array 2, we can say equals X, Y, and Z. Let's add the third array, which is a result of copying array 1 and array 2 to the result array. So we can just type let result equal spread operator and pass array 1, comma, spread operator and array 2. And now what will happen is it will take the elements of array 1 and the elements of array 2 and put them in the result array. So now when I console log results of array, result, and then save the file, I will get A, B, C, X, Y, Z in the result array, as I expected. All right, let's move on and explore the new array methods in JavaScript, which is map, filter, and for each functions. These methods do not change the original array content. So we'll start with the map function. The map method is used to apply a function on every element in the array. A new array is then returned. And to use the map function, we will start with the same simple array numbers. Let's define our first array, array 1, which is 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now the array 1, the array that we're going to map over, so let's add 5 to each value. Now all we need to do is return the value plus 5. So we can do that by adding our new array. We will call it plus 5. And this array will be created after defining the mapping function through the array 1. So we can type array1.map, and then for each value in array 1, return value plus 5. So we open up curly brackets, and then return value plus 5. And then when I save this, and then again console log our new array plus 5, I'll find 6, 7, 8, 9 rendered to the screen. And this is the same as the first array, but we just added 5 to each element in that array. All right, and now just to see the clear idea, console log the first array, which is array 1. Before that array, and when I save the file, I will find 1, 2, 3, 4, and if we add 1 to 5, I will get 6. 2, I'll get 7. 3, I'll get 8, and 4 plus 5 is 9. So you can see there is no loop needed, and we no longer have to add values manually to an array. Okay, and moving on to the filter function. The filter method returns a new array created from all the elements that pass a certain test performed on an original array. To use the filter function, we will start with the same simple array of numbers. Let's use the same array, 1, 2, 3, 4. So array 1, again, it will be the array that we're mapping over. So now let's keep only the even numbers in this array 1. So we have to return true if the number is even, and false if the number is odd. Here is one way to do that using the filter function. So we will set our array as even. Let even equal, and then we will use array1.filter. Then here, for each array in array 1, I want to return. And here I can use any things instead of value. So I can type X or Y or Z or anything that I'd like to use. Array, return for me. Let's have space here and then return for me, open curly brackets, and return this value. If the value mode 2 equals 0, and then I'll console log even. Even array. So if we test to see if the value is even, and if it's even, we return true, which adds the number or the value to the even array. If it's odd, we return false, which skips over the value to the next value. So when I save this and check the new array, I get an error. Even is not defined. So let's go back and see where this error is and then try to fix it. And this is why, because I wrote it as event rather than even, and now it should work for us. So let's save this and let's cross our fingers. And yep, we find 2 and 4. And that's all the even elements in our array. So here's what will happen. First, it will map through array 1 and it will check for the first number 1. The number 1 will then be evaluated and will check 1 mode 2. And if that's equal to 0 and if it's not, then it will skip to 2 and 2 mode 2 equal to 0. Then, if 2 is even, what happens? Take these 2 and store it in even array, the new array. Then it moves on to number 3, and again, 3 mode 2 is not equal to 0. Skips that, go to the last number, number 4, and 4 mode 2 equal 0. And that's true. Then store 4 just after the 2 element in the new array even. And then we get our final array, even array, which holds 2 and 4. And now it's at 6, 8, 12. Save 14, and save that, and we will find the new added numbers added to the even. So I should get 2, 4, 6, 8, 12, and 14 just as expected. Just like function, there is no loop needed. We no longer have to add values manually to an array. When working with the filter function, all you need to do is define what you want to keep, and then return true for all those values. And filter will handle the rest for you. Okay, so now let's move on to our last function, which is called for each. And for each is an array method that we can use to execute a function on each element in an array. Let's have a simple example to demonstrate this. So let's define our array. Let array1 equal, and let's use animals this time. So we have a cat and a dog and maybe a fish. So we use the for each array to iterate through each element, and then we want to console log that element. So what we can do is write array1 dot for each, and for each element. Say we type this element, just say E for each element, return console log that element, and as I said before, here we can use any words or any letters that we'd like. So now if I save this and check out our console, we will find those elements rendered to the screen: cat, dog, and fish. And here we just use for each to map through all of these elements of the array 1 and iterate and console log that element. So now let's move to the last feature of this demo for ES6, which is the new way of string template literal. So with ES6 template literal, we use enclosing backtick. And the backtick key is usually located at the top left corner of your keyboard, below the escape key, next to the key number 1. And here's what the template literal looks like. So let's define const, say string1 equal. Instead of using the double quotes or the single quotes, we will go and use the backtick and type our string. And remember, a template string is still a string, but by using the backtick and writing our strings as a template literal, we can do some pretty neat stuff. Let's start by string concatenation. Template literals can improve our code's readability. One simple example of this is when you want to use variables within strings. Let's see. Suppose we have, say, let person equal then first name. And give it a value of, let's say, Alfred. And the last name of Peter. Alfred Peter. That's enough. I might call my son that. Now, here we have our personal object, and our personal object has two properties, first name and last name. We want to console log the values along with some text. When working with strings, this may look something like this. So we console log, write our text, which is, hi, my name is. And then here we add plus person dot first name plus person dot last name. And then when I save this and go to the console, I will find, hi, my name is Alfred Peter. And we will add a space between them by just adding a string, then space between them like this. And then if I save the file and go back to the console, I'll find Alfred Peter with a space. And now the backticks add simplicity to this statement. As I said, it makes it more readable. So what I can do is console log, then use the backtick, and inside the backticks, hi, my name is. And then when it comes to the variable or objects or properties, you can just type the sign $. And then open up curly brackets and type person dot first name and then again move on and type space and again curly brackets. Person dot last name. And notice that I forgot the hash dollar or the sign $, and now it's person dot last name object properties. So when I save this and go back to the console, I'll find, hi, my name is Alfred Peter with a space in between. You see, we get the same result. And here we just miss a colon. And that's it. We write our statements, just in a shorter and a cleaner way. There's no more need for this sign. And so that's what the string literal of the new ES6 brings to the table. Well, that's it for this tutorial. I will see you later.